Every writer knows that the best conversations about writing don't happen in classrooms or symposia or any fancy artisanal setting. They happen at the bar, usually after deadline. That's the vibe we're going for here. This is The Other 51, conversations with writers of all genres about writing. I'm Brian Moritz. Today's guest is Dr. Nick Koberstein. Koberstein, welcome to The Other 51. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So we are live. You'll hear some ambient noise, hear some lovely bar music. We're at Eddie O'Brien's in Farmington, New York, not far from where we met. And this is good. This is détente. This is a UConn guy and a Syracuse guy sitting down at a meal and not fighting.
That's right. No oranges being sliced.
No oranges being decapitated by a weird machine in a GIF you keep showing up.
That's right.
So, well, hopefully, because we have the Syracuse UConn guy, we won't be here like all night, like for a 6 overtime version of a podcast. But you never know.
Yeah, well, that didn't turn out very well for us.
I think it turned out beautifully. This is the only time, by the way, that I ever really claim my Syracuse alumni status is when I'm talking to you.
Well, and it's funny because I parade my UConn status around like it's a crown.
Well, like I said, too, you're one of two. You're the second UConn person I've had, and I've only had 2 Newhouse graduates, I believe, on the podcast. So now we've reached a good détente. So that's good.
Good. No more Syracuse folks. Got it.
That's not what I said at all. So, Nick, to start off, can you kind of talk about your career, talk about where you are, what you do, and
so
basic bio.
I'm an assistant professor of child and family studies at Keuka College, which is where Brian and I have commonality, and then kids in Montessori. And so, I think what we get along in is that we're both kind of out there instructors on campuses. We like to try things out, take some risks. Usually they pay off, which is nice. And then we get to come and eat food and drink soda as we're doing today, and have some fun. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, so kind of talk about your work a little bit, the classes you teach, the writing you do in your work, and then we can kind of get into a little of the digital stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, so I teach 2 different styles of classes. One's human development, so it goes basically from pre-birth to after death, and we cover just about everything that happens in between. The other style is I teach classes based in relationships, so communication, family patterns, infidelity, jealousy, all the really cool, dark relationship stuff, which people like, and then, all the happy, cheery stuff, love, happy ever afters, and all that good stuff.
So, broadly speaking, in the areas that you research, in the areas that you study and teach, since this is a podcast about writing, where does writing and reading kind of come into like human development and family development, and not like from a career academic standpoint, but from a relational standpoint in human and family development? How important is that? What kind of role does that play?
Yeah, reading is of the utmost critical part, right? If you're not reading, you're not learning, and so I like people to read a lot. The one thing is I don't like being forced to read, so I don't really like forcing others to read what I want them to read. Rather, I want them to be bringing what they want to read to the table. And so in my teaching, when we do reading workshops, they pick their own readings to bring in, to champion, and then to discuss. And so that's a really cool way to allow people flexibility. In writing, I tend to be, the term we used to use in undergrad is a bit of a hard ass. I want students to write. I want them to get used to writing and revising, which is the most important thing. I think a lot of times we get stuck in the first thing we write. We're like, this needs to be perfect, this needs to be awesome, this needs to be what everyone wants to read. And the actuality is usually the first thing we write is absolute trash. It's probably got 2 or 3 golden nuggets in there that you want to expand on, but for the most part, it's your raw brain. It needs to be somewhat filtered and revised. And that's the part that I really try to focus on with students, but also the part that they struggle with the most.
Right. It's like Annie Lamott, the writer, has always talked about the shitty first draft.
Yeah.
Like your first draft is always terrible, and that's the point of the first draft, is to be terrible and to give you something to rework and revise.
And that's good. That's awesome. You got your ideas down on paper before a deadline. Way to go.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It almost feels like, and I've seen this too with my students, is they seem like revision is like a penalty, like they did something wrong, and when they get comments back, and maybe that's, some of the way that writing's been taught in the past. There's a certain element, I know I've talked to other people, like the red ink or just like the red thing like makes it look like this is wrong, and like the revision is like, no, this is the good, this is supposed to be bad. Now you take this, and now this is how you make it good, and now this is the opportunity to then turn it into something better.
The more antagonistic my comments are, the more I like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to go to that point because I'd have to be talking about more fundamental things,
right.
Scope, comprehension of material. But if I'm able to get really antagonistic and specific, you're doing a great job.
Right. Do your students get that? Because mine sometimes do, but I feel like, there's, and again, I teach journalism, so there's a lot of journalism deadline writing. So
I think they want to get it. Mm-hmm. I think they want to do drafts. I think they want to revise. I think what it comes down to is priorities. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times their priority is completion. Mm-hmm. But what they expect is kind of perfection. And so that's where they're at a line. And so it's tough as an instructor to be able to build in that structure, but also inspire them to create their own.
Right.
And so right now I'm operating in this space of these two competing ideas. I want them to have this revision, but I also want them to create their own structure. Mm-hmm. How much structure do I give them so that it'll enable the revisions, but if I give them too much, they're just going to do what I'm telling them, and that's not learning.
Right, that's one thing I've struggled with. So one thing I've done in one of my journalism classes is rough drafts for the final project or their final story are required, because I would find like the final story that I would get and be grading, and you know this, by the end of the semester you can give 3 pages of feedback. They're not going to read it, they don't care.
Yeah, so what good is the feedback?
Right, and I would read them and be like, this is really good rough draft. Like this final that you handed in, like there's something here that you could work with. So I started requiring the rough draft. I have to see it beforehand. But and so I have noticed better results. But I have also noticed this weird thing where like I'm grading it and like it's still a very good draft. And like the more polishing you do it, the better you get. But I run into the same point you make is like, I'm reading, like, there's this one, I'm like, this would be great with 360 video. Like, this would be great with this 360 picture. And then I have to stop myself and be like, no, this is their project, not what I want them to have done. And I can suggest that, but I don't want to be like, that's a real tough thing, I feel like, as a professor. Like, you see what this could be, but you're right, they have to learn it. They have to get there on their own.
Yeah. I think part of it's, that shotgun approach. If you and I were to sit down and start coming up with a paper, I think both of us would automatically write. Mm-hmm. Write an outline, write down thoughts, start drawing arrows, start making pictures, anything we could get down on paper to jumpstart something, because then when we come back, we're at that next step. Mm-hmm. That's something important to give the students and get them out of linear frameworks.
Right.
One way I've tried to do that is in our senior seminar class, something that I stole from kind of the cheesy side of journalism, BuzzFeed type articles, mm-hmm. right? Odyssey type stuff that we see on college campuses, mm-hmm. but in an academic sense.
Okay.
So coming up with a listicle.
Right.
But making sure you're citing your sources all the way through and having, adequate evidence and support, mm-hmm. Throws them for a loop.
Yeah.
They're used to those, 5-paragraph essays. And so
mm-hmm.
when you ask them for a really succinct paragraph on what they're talking about, citing, 3 different sources, mm-hmm. that's a struggle. And so creating length and then, concise differences mm-hmm. Can be fun mm-hmm. and challenging for them, but maybe that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, and we were talking before we hit record, about some of the different things we've been trying in classrooms and stuff like that, and kind of using more digital pedagogy, digital teaching tools to do that. And, I hesitate to say like shaking up higher ed because we're 2 guys at schools, right? But, trying, I think, to rethink the best way to teach things like writing, things like more reading, stuff like that. And I'm curious on your own kind of trip through academia, kind of where your inspiration for a lot of your ideas came from. Like, how did you get interested teaching things a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in an academic family, so, I have a grandfather who was a professor, I have a father who was a professor, and now I became a professor, and so it's kind of a weird thing. I took a lot of my inspiration from my own father and some of the ways that he teaches. He likes to have his students call him coach.
Really?
And have them refer to him in kind of an academic context.
Okay.
His grand idea behind this is you wouldn't let down your coach, would you?
Huh.
You'd prepare for any big game, wouldn't you?
Huh.
So why wouldn't you prepare for an exam or a paper you're writing by practicing? Really, really cool idea. Kind of perception is everything type of vibe. And so that kind of, coming up with thoughts and weird ideas and weird analogies always kind of resonated with me from the stories. Overall, I like to say, I'm here in the world to twist stuff up. I think there's problems we have, and we're not going to get at anything unless we try things, and that means taking risks. And one of the big things that I have in my own, teaching philosophy is I want students to be risk takers, which means I've got to be a risk taker too, and try some things and see how they go and evaluate them, though, at the same time in a more traditional academic sense, and make sure that I'm producing evidence that, reaffirms my ideas and, validates the work for the greater field.
Yeah, and we were talking about this before, and we were talking about a liberal arts education, because that's what two professors do when they come to lunch. They talk about defining a liberal arts education.
Yeah, perfect topic.
Right, and one of them, and I stole this from Seth Godin, who the idea is to get students to solve interesting problems, or just kind of getting them. It's not presenting them with how to do it. It's figure it out. It's my 3 favorite words in my classes is figure it out. I'm wondering though. Because I've found this too, how challenging it is to teach students about being a risk taker, especially kind of given the environment of higher ed now, given the job markets, given student loan debt, and there just feels like there's a lot of pressure on students in college. Also, kind of combined with the academic culture of public school and high school now, which is very standardized. We're going to do a whole other podcast on that. But so, how much resistance do you get, and how do you try to break through that resistance?
At first, I didn't get too much resistance because, I was new and novel, at least along the campus when I came to Keuka College. Now I get a little bit of resistance because people, I think, know what to expect, and they know that I'm going to throw them for a little bit of a loop. Really what I think the issue is that we get stuck in our patterns, and it takes something almost transformational to get us out of that. And that's a personal process. And so sometimes I hang my students out a little bit.
Okay. How so?
I have them do group projects, and I load a lot on them in the front. And I tell them what to do and what to come up with, and we work on it. And then at the end, I say, this is what I'm looking for you to do. And so, for instance, this semester, in our adulthood and aging class that I taught, we had a large research paper. Most students were weighing in at 20, 24 pages. A lot of research, heavy research, long paper that was done in a group of about 6.
Okay.
So crazy intensive, conflict-ridden work. Mm-hmm. But they got to know a lot about their topic. And then when we gave them the freedom to do something digital, I just said, let's do a digital project.
Okay.
Let's come up with something. Let's do some infographics. Let's do some videos. Do a digital magazine, do some graphic design. It felt free to them.
Okay.
More freeing than a paper. Mm-hmm. And so they almost ran through the field of daisies, with their hands,
right.
churning up all of the flower petals and what have you, and put out some really cool projects. The other thing is that I'm fairly forceful with my opinion of how things should look.
Okay.
And most of that is battling the cliche. Mm-hmm. No PowerPoint templates, no standardized backgrounds, no bullet points, don't feed everything from left justification.
Okay.
Don't let it drop in all at once. Mm-hmm. Use sound clips, use video clips, embedded and in moderation. Come up with schemes for what you want to do to make things pop. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that kind of helps them find their own tone and through that starts to challenge them to surprise me.
Okay.
And I ask for that, and some of them know what they're looking to do is to amaze me.
Okay.
Which is a really fun position to be in because I haven't been let down yet. Consistently, students are coming up with crazy ideas, like the ones who did Oldies, which is their digital magazine that they did on retirement.
Nice.
If you've never done a crossword puzzle completely based on financial retirement terms, this is the thing for you, right?
Right.
You know, word search on all sorts of risks and struggles in the retirement practice or retirement process. You know, just crazy ideas that weren't hard for them to put together, but conceptualized are meaningful.
Right.
Because it means that they're thinking about how to do something in a way that hasn't been done yet. And I think that's learning.
Yep. And you mentioned that, how much they engage with the material more, and how much they get to know it once they're kind of challenged to do something that's out of the ordinary. That's not the paper, or that's not, you know, the PowerPoint thing. So you mentioned, like, to get your students to be risk takers, you have to be a risk taker yourself in the classroom. So how do you do that?
So one of the things that, you know, you and I have shared this semester is the meme war.
Yes, he is. If you follow me on Twitter and follow the hashtag more, it's meme war over the past 2 weeks. Nick is the inspiration for it. Yours is KC meme war.
KC
right?
meme war.
All right. So where'd that come from?
So it came out of an idea to pick my students up. They were a little bit low. In the intro survey class I teach on human development, the tests are very, very hard. They're very challenging exams that are, you know, somewhat buffered by in-class assignments that are easier to do. And so it's a fairly balanced field. But, you know, these students, they were slumped a little bit. They were turned over. They were a little bit downtrodden because their average wasn't super high. I needed a way to get energy back into the class, and so I thought of how I could come up with something, and I thought, well, you know, I love memes. I love them because, you know, context matters so much in them. You can really talk about anything. They're short, they're snappy, they're witty, they're a lot of fun, and they're easily transferable from person to person through Twitter and social media. And so I thought, you know, how do I make it academic but also keep it fun? And so the one thing I wanted to do is I didn't want it to count for course content. Okay. I didn't want it to be forced. I wanted it to be opt-in because I don't think everybody would necessarily like the assignment, or everybody might not have Twitter, or they might not know memes. Surprisingly, maybe 0.5% of our population, right?
Right.
And so I told them, I said, I want you to do one that is solely based on course content. And then the other meme can be no holds bar, anything you want. And they had about 2 days, and they were posting them up on Twitter for people to do. And then the ones that got the highest likes got extra points. And each student got a little bit of extra credit that helped raise their grade, made them feel good, gave incentive. And I was blown away.
It was watching it is why it kind of inspired me to do it, and I did it across all 3 of my classes that I taught this semester with an added bonus. Like, everyone who did it got 3 bonus points, and then if you, the student who had the most liked / retweeted one got 2 more bonus points on the lowest grade. So, like I said, a little more for the creativity, but everyone got the same base. And yeah, it was so fun to kind of see. And I did it over a longer span than you. I did it over like 5. Like, I started on a Monday morning, and then it closed on a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, we were Wednesday to Friday on ours.
And it was funny because you could see it kind of slowly build. And like, some students who had me a few times were like, you know, more into it, but everyone else was kind of like feeling it out and like, can we really drag the professor here? Like, and then they started like, yeah, you can drag the professor, and it was creative, and it was fun to see, especially my law students like doing law related memes. I know yours do a lot with development stuff. And
then, you know, I mean, we're really talking about the lifespan, so the world's their ocean, to be, you know, cliche in a way that I said I wouldn't be. You know, really gives them everything to work with. But they chose to do it in theory. They chose to get the theories. They chose the course content that was meaningful and fit what they were looking for, and it was really, really cool. I was surprised by the sheer breadth of meme types.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, I mean, there was everything included. even better was that since we deal in development, I got a lot of my students who were using their own baby pictures as memes, which was cool. And I kind of started it off, I went through an awkward stage in adolescence. I mean, I'm an expert in this, so we all do.
Right.
But mine was super bad. And so, I put up a picture of me and said, don't worry, the in-group's this way. I'm the cool kid, follow me, in front of a laser background in our school picture,
right.
And it was fun, but I was surprised at how many students wanted to take a stab at us.
Yeah.
And were willing to, really drag us, make fun of us. It's cool.
Yeah, and it's funny because I would notice it too, and it was all. And what I love about it is you could tell it was always in good fun. It was never a mean thing. It was never mean. It was never low. It was jokes we made in class, or Moritz is making us go out and report and it's 40 degrees again, and complaining about that. And it was just, I did mine later in the semester because it was kind of the same thing. It's the last week of class, everyone's dragging, everyone's got too much work to do. Let's lighten the load a little bit. And we were talking before we recorded, but I feel like that's such an underrated part of teaching, and especially at the college level, of just that level of comfort, that level of, like we talked, you want to make them a little uncomfortable in thought process and what they're processing, but just kind of on a personal level of not even a safe space, but just everything's all right here, relax, you do your better work. You don't do your best work when you're super tense and bunched up and worried about stuff. You do your best work when your shoulders are down and you're a little more comfortable to have fun.
Well, I think that's one of the forgotten parts of being an instructor, higher education, grammar school up through high school, is that the environment and tone of the room matters at all times. Mm-hmm. And you really can't get information across to people if they're closed off. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to make people feel comfortable. You've got to allow them to be who they are. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's our secret to this risk-taking, is allowing students to open up and be who they are.
Right.
And if that means taking pot shots at us, that's cool with us.
Right.
Whatever makes you feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully what we'll see from that is students are more successful in the long run because they start understanding where the boundaries are, right? So it's a training exercise. And they understand that there's kind of a necessity toward antagonism among peers.
Right. You make fun of, how do you act when you're around your friends? You're kind of busting each other's chops and telling the same jokes. And, if someone crosses a line, when the line is crossed, then you make amends and stuff like that. But it's interesting, I just read a final project. Students did a story about office hours and why they don't students go to office hours, and that's the thing. We want them to come to my office hours.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do during. I'm
not planning to do things during those because I want to welcome you.
Right, and students don't come because they're intimidated by their professor or don't want to say the wrong thing, and just getting them to know that that's complete opposite is the truth. You are going to. You're going to get more comfortable, and it's going to just be that there's that weird wall, I think, especially in higher ed traditionally, of professor to student, and kind of crumbling that, I think, is so important.
Yeah, the breakdown between how you can use an instructor is really there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of students think that we're just the conveyor of the information, right? We get up there and we lecture, and your job is to get the information that we put out verbatim.
Right. It's an assembly line mentality of education.
But what we really want students to be doing is using that fluid knowledge, challenging what we're saying at times, There's a lot of times where what I'm saying is my opinion.
Right.
If you don't agree, bring that out. We'll discuss the merits of all the different sides.
Right.
But if we can't get them to speak like that, those opportunities don't exist. And so, doing something where students get comfortable in the environment really allows for them to feel a little bit more efficient in their beliefs of being part of the learning process, I think.
Yeah. So I ask this of every professor I have on the podcast. What is the student, from your experience, student's greatest writing sin?
Student's greatest writing sin, in my experience, not having your introduction match anything you're writing about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
For some reason, they introduce what they think they're going to write about and then write about something different.
Oh, really? Okay.
And don't go back. And so I try to tell them, write the body first and then introduce what you just wrote.
Interesting, yeah.
It's kind of like summarizing a movie you never saw.
Right.
It's not going to match up, or it's going to throw me in a direction where I'm sitting there going, I thought you were going to talk about this. And it's interesting because maybe it just doesn't match what we're doing conversationally. I don't preview all of my main points to you. I think of them as I go.
Right.
And so that's probably the difference that they need, is understanding writing's not that conversational.
Right.
You have the ability to go back and edit it.
Right.
You have the ability to present your points in a formalized way that aids in my understanding. And so I think that's the real thing that causes them harm in it.
Well, and kind of related to that, I have found that your first words that you type don't have to be your introduction. Like, I feel like there's a lot of students tend to have this, I have to write this in linear order. You know, whether it's a lead of a news story, like I can't write until I have my lead. And, you know, teaching them that, no, you can start, you know, especially if you don't do any outlining or anything like that, but you can start in the middle. You can start wherever you want to start and then go back and write the introduction later, as you said. And I have a similar kind of pet peeve with student writing, is that they will often write a very general lead, and this is a news story thing, so it's more journalistic writing, but it's like, college is a time of your life when you or blah 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 blah, instead of kind of get, you know, they go general instead of specific, and specific is always so much better when you're writing, especially kind of a more news story or more journalism story rather than but even a research paper. You want to get to your specific questions and your specific data and your research.
Yeah, your opening wants to be specific to exactly what you're going to be doing.
Right.
You want to say something snappy. You want that first line to lead to interest of just your introduction.
Right.
It doesn't have to be for your paper overall, but that introduction, so I'll keep reading.
Right.
Otherwise, you hit me with a cliche or a quote on the first one, and I'm like, yeah, I know where this is going.
Right.
You know, and it puts me in kind of a salty mood reading at times, because I'm like, all right, cool, so we started in cliches, everything else going to be hyperbole.
Right.
Or are you really going to analyze this stuff and hit me with it?
Right.
And, you know, I think if we saw that analyzation happen throughout the paper, I think we would see it in the introduction.
Right.
You know, and maybe we miss it in the introduction because they have to warm up.
Right.
And that's,
I feel like that's a lot
another one of those, you know, reasons we need that revision happening.
Right. I feel like, yeah, the introduction is the warm-up, is the, like, slow build to something. And, you know, I found myself writing this on a lot of papers and stories this semester, was thinking through structure for, you know, is such an important part of writing too. And, you know, and that comes from revision or outlining or whatever, but just kind of thinking through, you know, the steps of an argument, the steps of a paper. And obviously in academic writing, we have the advantage, in air quotes, of, like, you have introduction, lit, methods, results, discussion. Like, it's laid out for you. It's really easy structured, but that's such an important part of, you know, that gets back to writing is thinking, right?
Right.
You know, you can't, you write it, but you have to kind of think through how to make your points and how everything fits together.
Well, and you know, I think part of that structure also comes from, you know, the second deadly sin, right? Where I have students doing research that's completely confirmatory. It's been done before. What you're researching, people have written about. There are articles that could take you from start to finish in this. That's not what research is, and that's not what we're looking for.
Right.
I'm looking for you to take what other people have done, twist it around, and give me your point of view on that. Right? Look at that analysis. What are they lacking? You know, what would support? Did they miss key variables in their study? Was their sample off?
Right.
And take that information and show me how you would do it better. That would help the structure, because then you're actually making an argument,
right,
rather than following someone else's. And so that ownership is really, really important, of having some zingy thing you want, you know, some bone to pick with somebody somewhere.
Right. And that is such I think a good challenge that we have in higher ed, is, you know, again, kind of moving out of that high school, you know, that primary school model of, you know, it's very assembly line, it's very, you know, regurgitation, it's very much, you know, score to, you know, teach to the test and get and standardized test. And we're not going to go off on rants here, I promise. But I think that's part of what we do in higher ed, is kind of like, no, this is what they said before, now what do you think? And it can I've noticed it can take a while, but once students kind of click that, you know, that thinking for themselves and they can do this on their own. And that I love seeing that moment of, oh, I can, okay, no, I don't think this is right, but why not? And they start to kind of, you see the gears click into place.
Yeah, we're so consistent in what we're saying here because we're really still talking about risk-taking, right? We're still talking about comfort in the environment in order to get them to feel like they can do that. That they don't have to give us something we're looking for.
Right.
That feeling is freeing for me, for the students, because then I get to be surprised by what they're doing, and then they're putting out their own product,
right.
Rather than something that they didn't want to do. And so hopefully that would motivate them to go further in these topics, or motivate them to take a mindful approach to when to start, how to prepare, or follow up with us in, our empty office hours, crickets in the background.
So what's the best thing you've read lately?
Best thing I read lately. So, as one of the things that I do with my senior students, I have them write a letter to the incoming class of the next year.
Neat.
And it's a new thing. I haven't done it before. It's kind of just try to start a legacy where, the last out are starting to help the first in, right? And it was interesting because what I was reading through is that the students got what I was trying to do.
Okay.
And I don't often lay out my pedagogy for them to see because a lot of it I don't want them to know about. It should be shocking and surprising.
Right.
If you know the hold card, you're going to fall. And so it was surprising that a lot of them, they're like, what I really got out of this was I understood that I can just go for it. And that no matter what the critique is, I can revise that and make it better. And that was probably one of the most gratifying assignments that I've given yet. Probably better than having students drag me in memes, was them communicating to others kind of what the environment's like, what to expect, so that then these students who will come in next year, have me as an advisor the first time and a professor the first time, will kind of be ingrained in this peer-to-peer mindset of Koberstein's just looking for you to do cool stuff. What I'm looking for is for you to do cool stuff in innovative ways, think way outside the box, come up with something that just is crazy. And I'll look for a way to help you make it academic. But everything can be academic. And, one person said, you got to take criticism with a grain of salt from Koberstein because he's going to come at you hard with it. Don't think that he's being mean. That's actually a sign of him being helpful. If he's not coming at you hard, you got to put more effort in. And the strength of his critique is directly related to what he thinks you're able to achieve. And, that was a really, really cool thing to read coming from one of my students. Because it really validates the hard edge that I have at times, or my kind of tough exterior and my teddy bear interior, right? And so those were my favorite thing to read.
Awesome. If people want to find you and follow the next meme more, where can they do so?
So I'm Prof_Koberstein on Twitter. You can check me out. Usually what I'm doing is hanging out. No politics for me, nothing like that. I like to connect with my students and make sure that the classroom's open. People can get in contact with me. I love posting pictures of my kids doing silly stuff, So
I wouldn't know anything about that, but I guess it works for you.
Yeah, our kids are nothing alike, right?
No. Montessori kids run deep, man.
Montessori kids forever.
So, all right, Nick, this has been awesome. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks.
As always, thanks for listening to The Other 51. You can find show notes for this episode and all our episodes at sportsmediaguy.com on the Other 51 tab. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. I can highly recommend Overcast for this. Our theme music is by Ellie Moritz.